Why do I visit? And I was really touched by what Marlene said, because I arrived in Miami the same year, in 1981, which was a turbulent time in its history, just after the disturbances and upheaval caused by the killing of a black man by a policeman. That sounds familiar. Mariel refugees were arriving from Cuba, and Haitians, called pejoratively boat people, also sought refuge. The Haitians were put into a derelict missile base on Chrome Avenue, as we heard, men, women, and children thrown together in terrible conditions. And I wasn't there. I read about these abuses, and I wanted to reach out and help them, and I didn't know how. My chance came over 30 years later, when the Social Justice Committee of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Miami finally got permission to visit the Chrome facility. I'm going to tell a story from my first visit, which will also speak to the connections between prison and immigrant detention center. On a beautiful Saturday in March 2014, we drive west down 8th Street until the shopping centers and new housing developments give way to dying Melaleuca trees. At the corner of Chrome Avenue, we see a gas station and a giant sign for the Miccosukee Casino. A few hundred feet beyond the unmarked turnoff, a notice on a wire fence reads, "No weapons beyond this point." My stomach is becoming knotted. As we drive over steep speed bumps and negotiate concrete barriers, we know we are entering a high-security prison. After what seems like a long wait, a guard ushers us into the visitation area. The visiting booths are jail-like, with telephones set into plexiglass walls. I'm worried. How will I relate? Will we find anything to say? But as soon as my visitor appears, I'm glad to be there. He's a Haitian-American man of about 35. I'll call him Wilson. I've been hoping to speak French or my broken Creole, but turns out he speaks fluent English with an African-American accent. He'd come to the United States at the age of 5 and knew little of his birth country. He'd committed a minor crime at 18 and had been given a suspended sentence. Ironically, this infraction was rediscovered when he applied for U.S. citizenship 15 years later. Wilson told me how he'd been working at home on his computer business and watching his 2-year-old child when ICE officers banged on the door. He made them wait till his wife, a school counselor, could come home and take the baby. So I learned that detained immigrants were not just people who had arrived recently, but men who had lived in what they had thought was their country for most of their lives, men with wives and children and jobs. As I continued visiting Wilson over a period of months, I saw how the separation from his family was making him despondent. They had come to visit him once, but his youngest son was upset that he couldn't touch his dad or sit on his lap. Wilson never had his family come again. He didn't want them to see him behind plexiglass walls. I felt helpless and asked him if I could do anything. He asked me to call his wife. I did, and I said she could talk to me whenever she wanted. We became Facebook friends. I saw the pictures of his kids, including the little one, standing alone on a playground. I hope what he experienced will not have traumatic effects. Fortunately, with the help of his wife and a legal aid attorney, he was released after 6 months. On my last birthday, they sent me wishes and thanks on Facebook, which made me feel very humble. This story has a happy ending, but many of the men I visited have been deported or disappeared into the system without my ever knowing what happened to them. All I can do is to be present and walk with them for a while along their path. And despite everything, these men give me so many gifts. They teach me resilience, patience, how to take a long view, things that help strengthen me in these dark times for our country.